Hello, everyone. My name is Hady Raphael, and today on the show, the USA slaps Canada in Nations League final. John Herdman announces the Gold Cup squad, and is the Gold Cup Herdman's last chance? That and a lot more on episode 136 of The Ball is Round. Hello, everyone. So we're back at it. It's going to be a tough choice, a tough pod today. But I'm joined by my friends at last. At least I have friends that are going to talk with me and discuss and analyze the game with me. Elias, Eve, how are you guys?
Well, we're here. I think the term is misery loves company.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I'm
Elias.
I'm doing all right. I would have been a lot better today if Greece hadn't thrown away a point against France, but in the Euro qualifier. But Mavropanos side had like one of the worst games I've ever seen of a defender in my life. But so the national teams thing is not going. This has not been a very fruitful international break
No,
for me
no, you might
personally.
need like
But
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Other than that, though, I'm doing all right. I got to go see the Grand Prix this weekend, so I'm doing all right.
Yeah, you're
Lovely.
not really used to that, right? Because you're a Barcelona fan, so you're not really used to
I'm
have
used
a lot of
I'm not
disappointment
used to
in a
suffering
row
as a
during the
Barcelona
same
fan.
weekend.
I'm not used to being disappointed as a Barcelona fan. I don't know. Lately, it's
not as
lately it
much
seemed
as
like. I
not
mean,
as
this
much as
season
even me, right?
that is fair. That's fair. That is true. But
Right?
yeah, we've had our fair share of
Mhm,
disappointment.
mhm, mhm. Good, good. So listen, let's rip the band-aid off
Yes.
completely,
Yes.
Yeah.
quickly,
Let's do it.
as quick as possible. So let's start with the game yesterday. Um, it was the day, Sunday was the day we were waiting for. After a very solid performance by Canada Thursday against Panama with a win 2-0, Les Rouges were facing their arch rivals, USA, in the CONCACAF Nations League. For the occasion, John Herdman has some very tough decisions to make, and he presented that starting 11 with Milan Borjan as a goalkeeper. As the three right backs, we had Kamal Miller as a left center back, Kennedy as in the middle of the back three, and Alistair Johnston as a right center back. The two wing backs were Alfonso Davies and Richie Larea on the right. In the midfield, we had Eustachio, Kone, and Osorio, and up front, the duo David and Laren. Looking at that starting 11, guys, what did you first think right away, Eve? Like as soon as you
Yeah.
saw it.
I had some I was definitely surprised to see Scott Kennedy get the start. Stephen Vittoria, obviously he is a veteran player. He's put in a very long season in Portugal, but at the same time, he does have that big match experience. He's been in big matches, kind of for better and for worse in relegation battles. Most recently, so to see Scott Kennedy, who's also been in his own fair share of relegation and promotion battles, to be fair, get the start over kind of what we know to be the de facto preferred starting three center backs, kind of caught me off guard. I wondered if Atiba was going to get a start for his final match. Evidently, that was not the case. And I also had some concerns given, the US were on home soil, even though they were missing a couple of players after those red cards. I thought their midfield was still a really strong engine, and I definitely had worries about Istachio and Kone's ability to handle that workload that the US was going to throw at them. And then otherwise, though, no real surprises.
Elias?
I mean, same thing, right? Scott Kennedy was the only real, I guess, head scratcher. Everyone else had. I do think that Jonathan Osorio's inclusion was a bit of surprise, but given that John Herdman likes the players he likes, and national team managers do tend to go with their gut a lot rather than uh, form, if you will, that his inclusion wasn't too surprising. Um, you know, other than that, it was. I would have hoped to see Thibaut Henderson using his experience to kind of manage a short-staffed American midfield. Given that he does have that game management experience, it does seem like Canada was a bit out of their depth in the middle of the park, just in terms of they let certain moments get to them and they conceded a lot of ground. And Hutchinson isn't exactly a spring chicken, but he knows how to play in situations like this. So
Yeah.
that was the only thing really that surprised. But the majority of the starting 11 was what a lot of people predicted, that 3-5-2, uh, and yeah, that's about it.
Listen, I was very surprised because there were two messages from John Herdman before the final. The first one was we have to make sure that the veterans that brought us to that final were in a way, um, congratulated and were showcased in that final and in that tournament altogether. So I thought that we would see the likes of Victoria, of Hutchinson, and so on, maybe Hoylett, and those players that have been a part of the Canadian national team for a while. And the second thing was that John Herdman was saying to everybody that we need a trophy to lift. We need something to win. We need silverware. So I was a bit surprised when I saw that lineup. First of all, you're playing against a U.S. team that, yes, we're missing some key players. You talked about it a bit, Eve, with Dest, with McKenny, but
McKenny, yeah.
also with Miles Robinson also getting an
Yeah.
injury. But still, it's a very, very strong team in the middle of the pitch. So I was very surprised to see only one number six, one defensive midfielder with Kone and Osorio playing as eights, and sometimes Osorio playing a bit higher up, or even Kone sometimes playing a bit higher up.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that this was a bit unusual. I was pretty sure we were going to see a double pivot. The problem is, I thought that it was going to be either Hutchinson or Witherspoon, depending on the situation, and that surprised me a lot. And I thought that this was going to be a problem for the Canadian national team,
And it was.
um, and it was. But we'll talk about it during
We will
during the
talk
show
about
for
it later,
sure,
yeah.
for sure, for sure. Now, of course, the U.S. were playing on home soil. The U.S. are a very, very, very strong team that completely, completely destroyed the Mexican national team in the semifinals, and we all know how good is that team, the Mexican national team, that was for a long time, for the longest time, the best team in the Concacaf. Um, and right after, you looked at the preparation of that team, and right away you saw that American team really taking control of the ball.
Yeah.
Did you think that the Canadian national team weren't really prepared at the beginning of the game, Eve? Because it was obvious that the
Yeah.
hunger of the U.S. players was like
Yeah.
jumping from the screen. It
Oh
was it was
yeah.
unbelievable.
No, it was almost palpable, even at our homes where we were watching. It's hard to say because it's hard to imagine, a team who has, gone on and on and on about wanting to be in finals, wanting to play for trophies, wanting all this, that, and the other thing. It's hard to imagine them not being prepared for such an occasion. But then conversely, and this is going to sound like an excuse, but I don't mean it as an excuse. I mean, like, I'm legitimately wondering, because they haven't made any finals in 20 odd years. Maybe the occasion was a little bit bigger than they anticipated. Maybe there were some emotions that were kind of playing on the minds of players that caught them a little bit off guard or something. I agree with you, though. It looked like a completely different mindset between the US and Canada.
Yeah, and Elias, do you think experience played a role at first, like in the first few minutes?
Oh, I mean, absolutely, right? like you said, this is the first time they've been in a final as a group, right? A lot of those players individually have been in big
Yeah, in
games and
club.
either final
Yeah.
at the club level. And I think they very quickly realized just how different it is when you're with the national team at a game where you can win silverware. I think that maybe they were kind of taken by surprise. I mean, one thing that really stuck out to me is you reminded me of how long it took them to kind of clinch first place in the octagon,
Mm-hmm.
when it took them 2 games longer than it should have, right? And it gets to those big games, those games that really matter, where you can seal something or secure silverware or first place, and they tend to get a little jittery, and they tend to not get
Mm-hmm.
the result that was needed. So when it comes to national team, this is, I mean, it's context is needed here. This is their first final, but at the same time, you expect them to react a lot better. And I get it, that was the beginning, they didn't really do that well, but it was kind of sustained. This effort was lacking from a lot of players throughout the entire game, and you expect them to maybe settle in at bidding. And you could chalk up the first 5-10 minutes, you could chalk up the goal to nerves and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's they didn't settle in at all. So it clearly wasn't just nerves, it was a lack of understanding of the stage they're on.
Yeah, and we're gonna jump right into it because at first, the first real chance for the U.S. Of course, they had some half chances in the first 5-6 minutes, but the first real chance was that volley from Walker Zimmerman that like
Yeah.
went so close next to the left post of Milan Borjan. The momentum was clearly in favor of the American. But before the first goal, that was a good chance from Canada. And looking at the finish at that chance, maybe we tend to forget it. But I think that was the first real chance in that game. And with Kone receiving the ball completely on the right flank and sending a through ball directly to Cal Laren. Yes, of course, Walker Zimmerman came in to try to close the angle as much as possible. But Cal Laren had a clear shot on goal and he made a mess of it. He just
Mm-hmm.
gave it. It was like a pass to Matt Turner. Is that for you, Eve, the turning point of the beginning of the game for Canada? Because let's say
Mm,
if that shot was a bit
yeah.
more powerful or more dangerous, don't you think that the momentum could have changed?
Mm, I don't know if I would go so far as to call it the turning point because it's not uncommon to kind of see a player just sort of test a little bit, especially when you're not in the most ideal circumstance, like you don't have the goal wide open in front of you at your mercy. I would say it's not uncommon to see a player not necessarily, unleash their most what lethal shot just a few minutes into the match because they're kind of, although they went through warm-ups and everything, they're kind of adjusting to, the surface that they're on and, the actual act of playing and stuff. So I would be hesitant to call it a turning point. I would say, however, that it was definitely symptomatic of things to come.
Yeah,
And it
exactly.
probably showed us maybe again the degree to which Canada wasn't prepared to seize whatever chances they were going to get, because as we know, the opponent was.
Yeah, but Elias, you have the best goal scorer in Canada's history.
Yeah.
Getting a
And in La
chance
Liga.
and in like very good striking. Okay, let's not go that far. But but having a very good chance on goal,
Yeah.
8 minutes in, it's not like it
Hmm.
was the first few seconds. Uh, don't you think that's something that's a very big missed opportunity?
I don't think that in and of itself is a missed opportunity. I think the lack of follow up for the next 5-10 minutes is the real missed opportunity, because they showed that there was some real development there, and that this kind of pattern and this kind of repetition could create chances, and then they just didn't. Right, that was the biggest thing for me. Like, you miss chances all the time as a striker. It happens, right? I
Mhm.
mean, even the great
You
Cal
miss
Aaron
more
misses
Yeah,
chances
but
misses
than you
there's
chances.
score.
Right?
there's missing a
Exactly.
chance, and there's
Yeah,
completely like
you
making a
you
mess of it.
completely whiff on it. Exactly. And it's disappointing, but it's a very mental process, striker. We talked about this throughout with all the strikers in Montreal, and how being a striker is a very mental endeavor. And Kyle Aaron isn't the type to get really in his own head, and I think if you give him multiple chances, he does bury them. My biggest disappointment with that sequence, with that section of play, is how quickly they kind of just stopped exploiting that. Right,
Yeah,
because it was very well worked chance, and it was well developed, and it got a very good look, and then I didn't see that kind of play again. So I
No.
think that was the real turning point. The missed chance in and of itself, chances come and go all the time, especially in a final where everyone's so nervous, and stuff can fall
Yeah.
apart very quickly. The problem is the fact that they kind of just were like it didn't work, and then they forgot that that was ever a thing.
but they
Yeah, I'm
tried.
inclined to agree with Elias on this one. Go ahead.
But they tried because there was a few chances on the right hand side, but Anthony Robinson kept on being so good in front of Richie Larea, and it happened maybe 2 or 3 times where we know that Richie Larea is a very fast player, very pacey player, but Anthony Robinson is even faster than him, and
Yeah.
he closed the door quite a few times. So that was tried. Exploiting the right hand side of the pitch was tried by Canada quite a few times. I think that at that point they should have switched to the other side of the pitch on the left hand side, and they didn't do so for an unknown reason. But we'll talk about that a bit later. Um, at the 11th minute, after a scare on a low cross from Timoya to Balogun, Canada conceded the first goal on a corner taken by Giovanni Reina. Alistair Johnston was a bit at fault because he's the one that left, that forgot his man marking, and Richards scored on completely free header. How bad was the defending on this play?
Oh my gosh. Um, I mean, my question kind of like definitely there is a lot. Alistair Johnson is going to look back on that one definitely and have some feelings. I kind of almost feel though, like, kind of, and I guess to circle back to your question from earlier, perhaps the US was better prepared because it felt as though they were so attuned to where Canada could potentially be caught sleeping because the majority of the players were on their man. The majority of the players, seemed to be in a place that John Herdman would have reasonably expected them to be, right? So perhaps now that I circle back thinking, on this phase, yeah, I can kind of say that the US was better prepared because it felt as though they had this absolutely worked to a T. And of course, they got a little bit of help from some lax defending.
Now, Elias, as a former defender, what happened? What happened? How can you leave your man like that open?
When you switch off again, a lot of that was due to it was a very well worked corner, and the fact that creating traffic and creating those kind of not screens because that's a foul, but like that very difficult to navigate around situation
You
Yeah.
can
is
use you can
one
say
of the most
screens.
screen, right? It's one
Yeah,
of the most
exactly.
overlooked parts of a well worked corner. And if you look at most goals that are scored off of headers from corners, you always see a screen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, a bit more time working as a defensive unit would have helped, and everything that goes into defending a corner is mostly down to chemistry. But at the end of the day, it looked like it was man marking. They didn't really defend in the zone. So the job is follow your man. So
Yeah.
that's as straightforward as it gets, and that didn't happen. It's a brutally straightforward goal where it's simple:
Hmm.
lose your man, free header, goal.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to read more into to kind of read
Yeah.
take more out away from that than the fact that it was just a better the offense worked the corner better than the defense did, and the
Yeah.
result is
And I
inevitable.
I saw a lot of people blaming Boyan on this goal, and I'm like, that's not like,
It's
yeah,
such
of
a
course,
different, such a
it
well
was
placed
close.
header.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It was close to him, yes, but it's very, very hard to go
Hmm.
and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that's
Because
Chan
in
saying Boyan
situations like
Janice,
that,
must
yeah,
have
can
done
knock
better on the
down.
first goal.
in
But you know what?
situations like that, you're stuck choosing between going down with your hand, kicking,
Hmm.
using your feet, right? And it was like an impossibly, it was perfect. It was that mid place where you don't really know which body part to
Yeah.
try making the save with. So it's
Yeah,
yeah,
it was a very
if he
tough save to make.
if he had picked the right one, then he may have had a chance. But at the end of the day, I don't
Yeah.
fault. Milan Borjan for that at all.
And it was impossible for him to box the cross either because it was a bit
No,
far from him. So
exactly. It
so
was
no, I don't
a
think he's
perfectly worked corner
at
from US.
yeah, exactly. I don't think he's to blame. Now, of course, if he would have made the save, that would have been a miraculous save, a very good save, not miraculous, but very good save. And maybe he could have been a bit better, but we can't really blame him or anything. Uh, Now, right after that, the Canadian national team conceded that goal, Alfonso Davies really tried a couple of things. First of all, he tried to dribble past a few players. He got a couple of crosses that he completely mishandled, like completely. Um, is he trying too much, Elias? Is he doing too
Yeah,
much?
I don't think he's doing too much. I think he's trying too much. I think, uh, and I part of that is on him. Part of that is on Canada in general, kind of christening him as the savior of Canadian soccer and as the greatest Canadian
Mhm.
soccer player of all time. And Alphonse Davies is a world class talent, but I think that it kind of put all this pressure on him to be the difference maker. When in reality, Alfonso Davies, and you see this in Bayern, you see this when he's at his best, he's a facilitator, right? He is not the final product. He is the one who can take on one or two people on the dribble, but ultimately sets up the striker, sets up on a cross or on a cutback. He is
Yeah, he's not
ultimately
a
a
goal scorer.
facilitator.
He's
Exactly.
not a goal
So
scorer.
this
Exactly. He
idea
should
that he
cross the
has to
ball.
be the guy, I think also fed into the fact that he's the one who took the penalty against Belgium, right? And again,
Yeah.
that's let bygones be bygones. But I don't think that's not a consideration when he took that penalty. And I think that's also like his team is down, so he thinks that it's on me to do everything to bring the team back into it. And at the end of the day, you have Jonathan David, you have Kyle Aaron, who are two very capable goal scorers. You have Steven Eustachio, who's a very capable distributor in the midfield. You have tools around you to kind of bring the team back as a group. And I think this is a very difficult lesson that Alfonso Davies has learned. Um, because at Bayern Munich, there is 101 other people to help you get back into a game. But when
Yeah.
you are the top talent and not the final ball, the final finisher, it's a very weird situation to be in. So he has to kind of learn to trust his teammates a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Eve, John
Mhm.
Herdman tried a few things with Alfonso Davies, and
Yeah.
we've seen it quite a few times from John Herdman trying to switch him, to put him on the right hand side,
Yeah.
then put him in the middle, putting as a striker. What's the best fit for Alfonso Davies in that system? Like, does he have a? Do we need to put him in one position and not move him, or like, what should we do with him?
I mean, I can understand moving him a little bit for sure, especially, if you wind up in a situation where maybe you get, guys double and triple teaming him as they're, so prone to do, right? And maybe a change on the other side of the pitch could maybe destabilize a little bit. So I can see some slight degree of adjustment, maybe from left to right, because we know he is versatile. But I agree with you, like the number of places that John Herdman has tried to play Alfonso Davies, I mean, Alfonso Davies is a world class player when he's playing on that left flank. He is, basically unplayable. Um, so for me, he has a home. It is on the left flank. I think he's just as valuable as a left back, as a left wing back, as a left winger because he's so phenomenally talented. Although, like I said, I can see situations where you might move him to the right, just kind of to change things up and destabilize the opponent a little bit if they're, you know, really, really intent on marking him. Um, But yeah, no, I agree. It kind of feels like, do you remember back when Montreal played under Mauro Biello
Mhm.
and they put out a video after a game, and the video, it had like some of Mauro Biello's words from the dressing room, and it was "Get the ball to Nacho."
Yeah, yeah, I remember
Kind of feels a little bit like that. So it feels like John Hurden is like, I'm just gonna put Alfonso Davies somewhere and hope for the best.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that it seems like this, but we'll talk a bit more about John Herdman a bit later
Of
in the
course.
show. But yeah, it seems that. But I think that at one point, I agree with both of you because I think at one point you need to tell Alfonso Davies, listen, you're very good, but you're very good at what you do. You're our left wing back. Just stay as a left wing back. If you have the opportunity to score a goal, let's do this. If you have the opportunity to be to dribble. There's no problem at all. But stay in your role, within what you're able to do, and that's why you're one of the best left wing backs in the world, if not the
Mm-hmm.
best left wing back in the world right now. But I think that the fact that we're putting too much pressure on him and putting him, giving him a lot of responsibilities, uh, it kind of it shows the worst of him in a certain way in games, and that's something that we don't want to see from our best player or the best player in that team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the 34th minute, Giovanni Reina received the ball completely in the middle of the pitch, got a ton of space, was able to completely have like even it seemed like the game was in slow motion for him, and he picked on completely a very nice run from Folarin Balogun right behind Scott Kennedy. Scott Kennedy couldn't do anything about it. Balogun, one of the best strikers in Ligue 1 this year, just scored his first goal for the USA. Looking at that goal, first of all, is it only quality from the US team, or can we blame the Canadians on that play, Eve?
Hard to
Mandy?
say. Yeah. um, I mean, obviously, definitely, I think the quality of Balogun cannot be denied. By this point, I have a sneaking suspicion that Arsenal is like just quietly sitting back because, of course, he is an Arsenal loanee to League Iron this year. Um, but again, you have to wonder if having a defensive line who hadn't played together in quite a long time, having players of the attacking caliber of guys like Gio Reyna and Balogun and Christian Pulisic, and the list goes on. Was that setting the team up for success? Because at the end of the day, Scott Kennedy hasn't been in this lineup in a little bit. Um, and he kind of had the thankless task as well. He played in the middle of that three-man defense, and he doesn't usually play in the middle of a three-man defense as well. So he was slightly out of position. So again, you have to come back, I think, and question the coach more than anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. But there are a few things that we can look at. If we
Okay,
forget
sure.
about the coaching altogether,
Yep.
the midfield, Elias. Like, is it normal to leave that much space for Giovanni
I
Reina?
was
Who's at fault here?
I was watching the replay of the goal like after they had scored, and I thought to myself, Thibaut Hutchinson's usually in that little pocket of space.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And look, Osorio, Eustachio, look without Morris, who's declared for the U.S. team. It looks like Kone, Eustachio, and Osorio right now seem to be the midfield of the future,
And
right?
to
Lester
me,
Chouanier will
yeah.
be in that mix if he continues
Osorio
to
is
place.
29, man.
No, I mean, he's still
But
got several good years ahead of him, and he's
they
definitely one
do.
of John Herdman's guys.
Exactly, especially with Atiba Hutchinson now not with the national team. That
Yeah.
means that they don't have a proper designated pivot. They don't have a ball
Mm-hmm.
winner because Steven Eustachio is too good on the ball to be a pivot. He's
No,
too good
that's
on the
not
ball
fair.
to be
Yeah.
sitting deep as a six because they need his distribution talents further up the field, which means they don't have someone that could sit and pick out threats,
I mean,
cover spaces, and be that bridge between the back line and
What about
uh
Samket?
and the midfield. Samuel
he's
Piet,
currently
but
injured.
Samuel Piet isn't firstly is injured. Second of all, as a lone six when it comes to winning the ball, I think he's great. I think he's better as part of a double pivot. I think he's better
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you
alongside
play
someone
with
who can.
Piet Eustachio,
But the thing is,
with Coney up front.
Eustachio then has to sit further back because Samuel Piet's talents do not lie as that of a pivot with the ball. If they don't have the
Yeah.
ball, then Eustachio Piet double pivot could be very interesting. If they're playing against a team that they know will dominate them possession wise, then sure. But if they're
Exactly.
going to
They
That's what
were
gave,
playing that team.
but they weren't. You shouldn't expect, especially against this American midfield, you shouldn't expect to give away 60% possession.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not how that works, which means that you're going to need Eustachio to receive the ball in pockets of space, kind of like what Gio Reyna did, and pick out passes. That means he can't be that deep, which means that Atiba Hutchinson, right now, with the team that John Herdman picked, is that only option. They don't have another pivot that can do that at that level. So I was watching that and going, that's usually where Atiba Hutchinson is. Now, I mean, we could talk about Scott Kennedy and how, one on one, there's no way a man should go all the way around and beat
Yeah.
you to the ball, right? I get it. Balogun is incredibly quick, and there's a reason that he's one of the best strikers in Ligue 1, and it's that predatory instinct, and he's very good. At the same time, you have to track that, and that's not great. But in terms of the midfield breakdown, this is what you get when you have 3 8s and 3 box-to-box midfielders. Or you have a Osorio who's a bit further up. You have Kone who plays a bit deeper, but you don't really have any assigned roles in the midfield. It's kind of just
Yeah.
in terms of positioning without the ball, they're kind of just all there. It was like a flat three for a lot of the game, and I was just they were waiting to get split open like that.
Interesting, interesting. Let's talk about Scott Kennedy because you did mention him here on this goal. Yes, he didn't look very good, but what about the decision of putting him in the middle of that back three? Because let's talk about that role first of all. If you're
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of a back three, you
Then
need
you're
to
like,
be able, you need to be very good with the ball.
mm-hmm.
You need to be able to cover uh, cover the risk taking of
Yep.
those other two central defenders, and you need to be to have some sort of experience, and you need to be the general of that defense.
Mm-hmm.
Very weird because Scott Kennedy can be a very good left center back, but
Yeah. We've
is
seen him be
he?
excellent.
I think that we could have seen maybe Kamal Miller sitting in the middle of the three, or yeah, Victoria, yes, but like if you had to choose between the
One
three
of
of
the
them,
three.
exactly, I would choose Kamal Miller. What do you think about that, Eve?
It's a little bit hard to say because, unfortunately, I don't watch a lot of the division where Scott Kennedy plays, and Kamal Miller does offer a certain degree of mobility on that left-hand side. And I'm not 100%, which you do want your left center back or right center back, your outside center backs to have when you're playing in such a system, right? You want them to be able to carry the ball a little bit. If your team does happen to enjoy some possession, or if you're bold enough to play out the back against a side like this. So I think, if we were going to look at it maybe from that perspective, that could be why. Because we have seen Kamal Miller, and as well, Kamal Miller, we have to say he is very apt at covering somebody as attacking minded as Alfonso Davies was positioned to be, right? We know that he's really, really good at covering for the left wing back when they roam, especially knowing that the midfield in front of him wasn't necessarily equipped with those defensive responsibilities, like Elias had said. So I do kind of think, and it's largely based on the fact that I've just watched a lot more Kamal Miller than I have Scott Kennedy in my life, that I do still think Kamal Miller was best positioned on the left-hand side.
Interesting, interesting. Anything to add on this, Elias?
No, I mean, look, if it's not Steven Vittoria, then I would not have played a three back. Um,
Yeah,
Quite simple. Scott Kennedy, again, I don't know how much of a run as a middle center back he's gotten, but it's a huge ask. I think having Alistair
yeah.
Johnston there is not the move, and I
No, of
don't
course
think
not.
Kamal Miller there either is the most prudent decision, because in terms of distribution,
Joel
that could be
Waterman.
good with the ball.
Well,
Joe
okay,
Waterman
we,
is
we
someone
can't we
that could
can't tell we
potentially,
can't teleport someone in.
right?
I
with with
know, but
with the group John Herdman has, if it's not Steven Vittoria, who also could very well be, in his last year with the national team, I think that you go with a four back, and then you pack them. Then you have, an extra player you could put into the midfield, because
Yeah,
it's very clear
shoehorning
that
somebody
neither of them,
in. Yeah.
It's very clear that neither of them were ready for that position or right for that position. If somebody, comes along like Joel Waterman, who is right for that kind of role, then you can revisit the 3-5-2 or the three
Mhm.
four three or however you want to play with the three central defenders. Until then, I think a 4-4-2 would have been a lot better suited to the team that was on the field.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree. Now, a few minutes later, you talked about the presence of Steven Estacio and how much you would like to see him get a bit more forward. And he tackled the ball at one point, Steven Estacio, and tried a long shot outside of the area. It wasn't very easy, but it was stopped by Matt Turner. It wasn't a great chance, but it was stopped by Matt Turner. How did you find him in this game, Elias? Because I felt that he was pretty good in that game, Steven Secchio.
It wasn't the level we're used to.
Mm.
I think he's, especially in a game where possession is so valuable, and it's, winning it, it's high up the field is incredibly important. Um, I would like to see him maybe be more influential in the game. He seemed a little bit passive at times. Other times he seemed very direct, like in that shot. But a lot of times he seemed too unwilling to kind of kickstart the offense, which is, if he's going to be a playmaker further up the field, he has to be right. Because if he's going to be kind of methodical and dictate the pace, then he can be that pivot. But then you lose that technical ability further up the pitch. So it depends on what they're trying to have set up. I think that he was good. I think that he did a very capable job, but I think that it was very clear that he did not play his best soccer, especially now with the national team.
Yeah. What about Eve Richie Larea?
Mhm.
Because we talked about the switch at one point where
Yeah.
Larea was switched to the left side because he tried a very good shot on the 38th minute that was saved again by Matt Turner. I think one of the best chances of Canada when he got that chance. Um, how a lot of people were saying that he doesn't deserve to be in the starting 11 and I should have been maybe Tejan Buchanan on the right hand side with Alfonso Davies on the left. But do you think he was that bad during that game, Richie Laria?
Mm-mm. I mean, no. I think if we're pointing fingers at lackluster performances, he's certainly not the first person who comes to my mind. And he also was kind of victim of John Herdman's attempts to move Alfonso Davies here, there, and everywhere, right? So he had to be forced to play a bit out of position. We have seen him play on the left
Yeah,
flank for sure for Canada and for TFC. So it's not as though it's completely foreign to him, but still, a mid-game shift is undoubtedly a little, jarring for a player at times, especially when you consider the gravity of this occasion. Um, no, I thought he tried. I think he was outmatched. Definitely, Anthony Robinson was, I thought, a phenomenal player for the U.S. in that match, and I think it was just the better defender won out for when it came to Richie Larea.
yeah, exactly. And you know, uh, nothing really happened afterwards. I think Canada had a few chances just before the half, but then weren't able to score, and then that was halftime. Um, if you were the national team coach, Elias, what would have been your words in a dressing room?
I
And
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
it's difficult because you're not just trying to make tactical adjustments. You're trying to kind of wake the team out of maybe a stupor, right? I don't think anybody expected them to go down into the half down to nothing on two relatively avoidable goals, right? I do think that they
Hmm.
were overrun for large parts of the game. I do think that they were on the back foot for a lot of the game, so that requires an adjustment. But in terms of just a man management, which is John Herdman's strongest attribute, it's about waking your team up. It's about getting them fired up again. It's about refocusing their attention on the task at hand. And so, I mean, you need this kind of storybook halftime rousing speech that sparks a comeback and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's mostly about the man management side of it, where you need to kind of get your players going. And if the first half was any indication, it really they seem to be far too complacent. So
Mm.
that would be the first thing you have to address is this lack of fire that unfortunately persisted after halftime.
Yeah.
If at halftime, every soccer analyst, every Twitter supporter, every Canadian supporter, every Canadian, everyone on the streets thought that there will be substitutions and there weren't any. How
Nope.
do you explain that?
Scratching my head. Because I mean, clearly Canada were getting overrun in the midfield. They were struggling on the wings. I think this game was, even though, like I said, Richie Rea was far from the person to blame. I still think this game was crying out for somebody like Tajon Buchanan to just really keep, the US honest, and really pose a challenge to them that the constantly migrating Alfonso Davies wasn't doing for whatever reason. And I mean, Jonathan David was largely invisible for huge chunks of that match. And part of it is just because Canada didn't have the ball for sure, but nonetheless, yeah, I was just as surprised as all the rest of Canada.
It was unbelievable. Now, the second half, we're not gonna dwell on it too much because there's
Well, it ended
yeah,
2-0.
it ended
Spoiler
2-0,
alert.
but in the second half, I'm just going to give you just a few things that happened in the second half. So, first of all, a crossbar on a header from Richards, again,
Hmm.
when the ball wasn't able, like the Canadian defense wasn't able to clear the ball at all. A save from Scott Kennedy on the line around the 55th minute. A last ditch tackle from Sam Adegugbe. Again, Canada trying to create something, having the possession and not being able to create a lot. There's two chances for Canada that for me are very important. First of all, the Kyle Larin chance, getting the cross from Davies, missing his first shot, but then getting the ball back, having an kind of an open net, like maybe not a complete open net, but it should have been easy, and he puts it
Hmm.
completely over the bar. And at the end, in the maybe 94th minute, and I think
Yeah.
that was the best link-up play I've seen from Canada during the whole final. Alfonso Davies, at last, not attempting something crazy, just giving the ball to Kyle Larin. Kyle Larin, very interesting, back healing it to a running Jonathan David, and Jonathan David completely missed his shot.
Yeah.
Why haven't we seen a lot more from those link up plays from Canada during the whole game, Elias? How can we
I
explain that?
think you can't. It's simple, right?
We need to
Because if
find
you
a
have
way. We need to find a
all
way.
this technical quality narrow, right, you have to have this link up play, especially because you realize very quickly that you're not going to be able to run through this defense and uh, just have your way with the flanks. Then you have to combine in the middle. You have Eustachio, you have Jonathan David, who's a very good distributor for a striker, and you have all these people that can play well. And then in turn, by combining in the middle of the field, it will open up your flanks for someone like Tajon Buchanan or Alfonso Davies to finally get some freedom. That's how it works, and they're seemingly they kept on trying to feed Alfonso Davies and force feed him the ball and hope that he could manifest something incredible. And it, this is an entire learning experience for the entire team and for John Herdman, that at this level, when everything is on the line, it's teams that win it. It's a group effort. You have to win as a unit and not through the magic of one player. Unless that player is Messi, then it's a different story. But uh, as a unit, especially when it's such a daunting task of playing the U.S. at home, you have to do it through a collective effort. And they saw that's what happens when individuals try and win a game, and they've seen what happens when a unit tries to beat the U.S. They've done it before. So I think this is a stark reminder that they are not the greatest team in the world, and they have to work at it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, we're not going to talk a lot about substitutions. We're going to leave it for the segment of John Herdman for that game. Uh, Final whistle, Eve.
Yeah.
Defeat, 2-0 defeat. What was your feeling? Like, explain a bit how, you know, what was your thought process at that point?
I think, given how I saw Canada start the match, I kind of come to terms with it by the time the final whistle blew. So, any sort of visceral reaction that I had already been spent, for sure. I think it was very sobering. It was kind of like Elias said, it really, I think, brought a lot of people back down to earth. If getting overrun at the World Cup did not bring anybody back down to earth after qualification and all that, then I would sincerely hope that this match did just sort of remind people that Canada does still have a long way to go to become the kings of CONCACAF that they purport to be.
I completely agree, but you know what? I had a different kind of feeling. Yes, I agree with you, and I had that feeling too. But I thought that it's been a while that I haven't watched a game where, in my mind, it was Canada that completely lost the game. Yes, the
Yeah.
US were good. Yes, the US were well prepared, but Canada didn't show anything.
No.
Canada wasn't at all at the top of their form. Canada didn't perform at all. It feels like the players didn't care uh,
Mm.
in a way, or weren't prepared at
Yeah.
all. And that's something that really struck me. I was like, we had a chance. We had a chance to show that we are a team to be reckoned with. We are a team that has to be taken very seriously. And you know what? We completely blew it. We completely blew it. And for me, that was unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we can blame whoever we want. It's a collective effort. Nobody played their part during that final. Elias, I don't know if you want to share your thoughts at the end of the game.
No, I mean, I had a similar feeling about it, right? And until they prove otherwise, people can now claim that the Octagon was a fluke, right? Because when they got to the World Cup, they were not. I mean, they were great against Belgium, but they were not particularly impressive at the World Cup. And in the Nations League, yes, you dispatched Panama and you did that. Congratulations, you beat Panama. But they play like a CF Montreal away game. Yes, Chan. It did feel like that at times where there was, a lack of ideas. But at the end of the day, now if they want to be taken seriously, they had the chance to kind of show this proof of concept that, the Octagon and topping and being the best qualified team in CONCACAF, and the fact that they were rated so low going into the World Cup was all, was a mistake. And they kind of didn't deliver on that, because if they had at least, if they had shown some fight, if they had shown a way back into this game, if they had maybe even pulled one back, then you can kind of see that, yes, you lost to the US and they
Mm-hmm.
were at home. It happens as for your first final in 20 something years. So now with that performance, the onus is on them, on the group, on John Herdman to kind of say that no, we are for real and we are going to be serious, because that performance was indicative of a team that is not serious.
It's I think it was very disappointing, and let's leave it at that because
Mm.
we're all very disappointed of
Yeah,
that result and the way Canada played during that game. But you know
Yeah.
what? It was one chance for a trophy. I hope we'll get other chances. And talking about our other chances, we do have an
great segue.
opportunity. Ah, thank you, thank you.
Great
We
segue.
do have, we do have a great opportunity right now, starting very soon with the Gold Cup. We're waiting for John Herdman's announcement for the Gold Cup squad, and we got it today, just during the day, and that's the squad that will go to try and lift the Gold Cup. So, as goalkeepers, Milan Borjan is back with Tom McGill and Dane Sinclair, so no changes there. As defenders, we had Samuel Adekugbe, Moise Bombito, Zachary Broguillard, Scott Kennedy, Richie Larea, Zachary McGraw, Kamal Miller, Steven Vittoria, and Dominic Zator. In midfield, we had Steven Sakio, Victor Luturi, Jonathan Osorio, David Waterspoon, and Ali Ahmad. And up front, we had Charles Andreas Brem, Lucas Cavallini, Junior Hoylett, Liam Miller, Jason Russell Rowe, and Jacob Schaffelberg. I have so many questions.
I have so
But
many questions.
let's start with you, Eve. I'll let you ask the question.
Well, we're not off to a good start when I have to Google one of the call-ups because I didn't know him from a hole in the ground. So that's always a head scratcher when you're going into a competitive match and not just friendlies to kind of feel someone out. dot dot dot. Yeah, I gotta tell you, it was to be expected that the European-based players, most of them would not be attending the Gold Cup. That's kind of like the unwritten rule almost of the Gold Cup. Because if you look at squads from other nations, you see the same thing, right? So that part did not surprise me, just to be clear. What did surprise me, I think, was I just felt it just honestly it feels very random in the sense of players who we've never seen before. Zach McGraw, Ali Ahmed, Jason Russell Rowe, even Jacob Schaff. Oh, no, Jacob Staffelberg's been called up before, so I'll leave him to the side. These are players who have never been in the camp with the team before, right? To my knowledge, at least. According to Google, also the same case. So it just in a competitive scenario, it feels like a strange time to bring them into the camp. And again, it just makes I just struggle to envision the plan associated with some of these call-ups, I guess.
Yeah, and you talked about those new players in the midst of the national team. Um, Elias, were you surprised at those call-ups that she's talking about? So Zach McGraw, even Jacob Schaffelberg, even if he was in part of the team before, Jason Russell Rowe, who was the other one that Ali Ahmad. What do you think about it?
My first reaction to seeing the lineup was seeing Ali Ahmed's name, and that made me very
Yeah,
happy because that means he's doing much better, and he's not only is he better at
Yeah.
soccer, but he's getting his national team call up, which
And he
congratulations,
is a
and
young player
I'm
who
very
excites
happy.
me a lot. Yeah.
Exactly, because every time he got the ball, when they played against Montreal at BC Place, he was dangerous and he was terrifying. And you know what? If that's someone that can kind of be a catalyst, then great. But as for everyone else that you kind of mentioned, it left me scratching my head. I kind of didn't understand. I would have rather see again. I know that European players don't do the Gold Cup, but I would like to have seen. I would have rather seen Atiba Hutchinson play the Gold Cup than the Nations League if he
Yeah.
wasn't going to play the final.
he
You bring
said
in
in an
someone
interview
like
that he couldn't be at the Gold Cup because his wife is about to give birth.
Okay,
I.
fair enough.
That is a very good reason. Um,
Yeah.
that is a very good
Um,
reason. So I withdraw that comment. But again, I would have liked to see. Obviously, Mathieu Choignard. I don't know what he has to do to earn a call up. I don't understand what more he needs to do and what more he needs to prove
yeah.
because it wasn't just one or two good performances. He's been arguably Montreal's best player. I mean, Jonathan Sirois, who again, he also, if this is a Milan Borjan kind of farewell tour, Jonathan Sirois better be getting a call up
The following camp.
immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
But the big one for me was Mathieu Choignard. And again, congratulations to Brogiard, who, despite having a minutes restriction, um, proved that he belongs there and he can kind of he can bring his own thing. But again, coming back
But
to Choignard, he is not just the has not just been Montreal's best player and most consistent player all season. He's been one of the best players in his position as a box midfielder in the Eastern Conference, and not having him included is I'd love to
I
hear his reason. Because if he wasn't in the Nations League, it's because you're saving for the Gold Cup. Fine, whatever. But now that he's not in the Gold Cup squad either, I'd love to hear what John Herdman's reason for this is because I cannot think of a single one.
Eve, you've been trying.
um um I don't disagree overall. I think it would be really interesting to hear John Herdman's comments on some of the choices that he's made, particularly those choices who, we really didn't know before, right? Um, but like for me, Victor Latourie, he was called up to the last camp. So, it seems to me that that indicates, and especially he's only 22 years old. John Herdman probably has some plans down the line for this player if all goes well for him, right? But for me, yeah, I do feel like, especially in a tournament scenario when you're dealing with a limited squad, a player with the versatility of a Mathieu Choinière can be really valuable. If an injury, God forbid, should hit your squad. But I mean, even when we look at central defense, again, we have Dominic Zator who manages to, I don't know, stay in the orbit of this team and consistently get called up, even though he doesn't play. When there are guys like Kyle Hebert who did get to play last camp, against Honduras. When there are other defenders who are in their season, who are theoretically in their best form right now. Like, even if he doesn't want to Joel Waterman, there's Lucas McNaughton, for example. Yeah, I don't know.
Now, listen, I can understand the choice in central defense, and the reason behind it is Zatoro was with the Nations League on the Nations League roster. So you want that continuity. You want to make him feel like he's a part. So you give him a
Sure.
chance in the Nations League. So you're going to give him a chance in the Gold Cup because he hasn't played any minute
Because
in
this
the
is a
Nations League.
charity?
No, but like he's a part of that for John Herdman. He's a part of that squad. So why not give him minutes in the experimental competition that is the Gold Cup, and that's how Canada is looking at this as the Gold Cup as being
Yeah.
experimental. So that's Tatar. So I can understand it. I can understand Bombito because he was called up also. So these I can completely understand. For McGraw, he's been in a starting lineup of Portland since the beginning of the season. 17 times, like all the games, he was in the starting 11. So it's a player that's been there. I don't understand why it's not Kyle Hebert. I completely agree with you, Eve. But maybe because Zachary McGraw is a dual has a dual citizenship, so he's
Yeah.
afraid that the U.S. is going to call him up. I'm not sure, but I don't think they were
Well,
gonna call him up. But what's interesting is that one of my if you go on the Twitter account of Portland in French, he loves that guy. So maybe he could show us some glimpse of quality.
yeah, this is the
Uh,
thing. I don't know
huh,
him. I'm kind of judging him.
exactly.
So,
So that I can understand. But let's look at. I think defenders for me are not the question. Even if I would have liked to see a Joel Waterman and Kyle Hebert, I kind of understand the
okay.
logic behind it. But I look at the other things. I'm sorry, goalkeepers. We talked about it. Milan Borjan, I don't think he's going to retire at the end of the
No,
tournament.
he's
So he's
going
still
out
going to be
on,
there.
yeah.
Exactly. So he's still no. I don't think he's going to retire from the national team either.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So
Oh,
so
really?
that's what I meant. I don't know. Did he declare that he was retiring?
No.
No, but I think that at the same time they could be like, look, we have the World Cup to prepare for. We need to move on and
It's
address
possible.
the youth.
Maybe his
So I
role will
think,
change,
yeah, I think
but he
maybe
could
he'll be a
still,
backup. At the same time,
yeah.
you have three young, promising keepers, and if Tom McGill is going to stick around and be one of those promising keepers, you have Dane St. Clair, you have Jean Siwa, who are both proven in MLS.
And you have Max
At some
Crepeau,
point,
who's your next number
you have
one.
Maxime Crepeau, who, when he comes back, who will again most likely slot into that spot. You have to let them fight it out because Milan Borjan will not be there at the World Cup, that's for sure. And you have to
Hmm.
let them get some tournament time to see who you're going to go with.
Yeah. So that's the first question mark. For me, Jonathan Sirois should have been there. I still don't understand why Tom McGill is there, but I've said it
Well,
last
we
time
can
now.
refer you to a couple of other episodes of Hattie's.
Exactly. There's in midfield. There's a few things. Okay, so Victor Luturi was called up also in the Nations League. Okay, the rest, David Witherspoon was called up in the Nations League. Of course, you want the experience of Jonathan Osorio. You want the experience of Steven Eustáquio. Completely agree with this. Ali Ahmed, I'm very happy to see him there, but he doesn't have any experience. We're not sure if he's fit because he hasn't played yet since his concussion.
Yeah.
So we're not really sure if he's fit. And you only have 5 midfielders when you know that you're going to play
Feels
with
so
3.
slow. Yeah, it feels so small.
Like, what the hell? And what, I don't know. Where's Sam? If you're taking a player that's about to get back, where's Sampiet? Where is Sampiet? Where's
Sampiet hasn't played
Machichwanya?
since April 1st though.
Yeah, there's like a
Still.
big difference between Ali Ahmed's injury timeline, like since he's last played, versus Sam Piet.
Right?
So yeah, I agree with Elias on that one.
I don't
Just
know
in the
if
dressing room,
Yes, that's true.
Sampiet will bring a lot. So even if he's not going to play,
But
you're
he's
going to
not
have
even training with
someone
the group
that's
though. Yeah.
huh?
Piet's not even training with the group yet. He's still
Yeah,
doing
no, I
individual
don't
work.
think you. Yeah, I don't think you can bring a guy just to fill a
Right.
space in the locker
I don't know
room.
what the status of Ali Ahmed is. If he's training with the team again or if he's doing individual work as well. But Piet doesn't look close at all to coming back. Like at least
Okay.
he might be fit for the start of the Gold Cup at that point. But it brings back to your point about locker room.
Question marks, yeah.
Locker room, and he could have been ready for the latter stages. And what is I don't know Victor Luturi, but what does he have more than Mathieu Chouanière? I can't understand it. Like it's not logical. And then you look at the strikers, and I want to put out the comment of Robbie. Will we be able to score?
That's a good question, Robbie.
Look at the strikers. You have Lucas Cavallini. I'm not really sure what he's doing there still.
He's one of John Herdman's guys.
Yeah. Then Charlie and Andreas Brim, Junior Hoylett, Liam Miller, Jason Russell-Rowe, that I'm very excited about him, by the way, and Jacob Schaffelberg. But Russell-Rowe and Schaffelberg are not strikers. They're going to play on the wings. They're going to play as creative midfielders or, pacey midfielders in a certain way. Who's going to put it in the back of the net? Cavallini?
Lucas Cavallini.
Evidently.
Vancouver Whitecaps legend. I think Cavallini will get the start as a striker.
Yeah.
I think he'll get first crack for sure. But again, Roberto was kind of hit the nail on the head where they score. Again, Brim. Hoylett in the chat as well. Brim had a good season, so
yeah.
There's that. Junior Hoylett does have a lot of experience. There's people that can score. The question is, will they score? And that is where it gets a little bit more mercurial and not super filled with confidence. So
agree.
But
yeah, 11 goals for Brim is all right in the season for sure.
11 goals in second
29
division
matches. Yeah.
Second or third division in the Netherlands.
I can't read Dutch well enough to figure it out.
I think he's at FC Eindhoven, right? Or something like that.
Hold on. I've gone too far down my rabbit hole here. He is currently.
He's in the second tier. Yeah, FC Eindhoven is in the second tier of.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to pronounce, but yeah.
So we're putting players that are in second tiers of some European leagues.
It's not like he's playing in the championship, for example.
Yeah. No, championship is a very good level.
Exactly, right? It's a high level, but it's the second division of Holland.
So you're looking at that squad, and we're going to play the game that Eve hates. What's your starting 11? Let's start with you, Elias.
I was just going to rip the Band-Aid off me.
Can you put the group up again? Can you put the list back up again? Because
just end my suffering.
Are you going to put it?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, I was suffering.
I would start Milan Borjan because I do believe this is his last tournament with the group. If they are going to stick with their three four if the
Of
three
course. Look at the number of defenders. For sure, he's going to play with the back three.
I
Well,
would put I would play this is a full strength 11. I would have Scott Kennedy, Kamal Miller, and Steven Vittoria as the midfield as the middle center backs. Then I would
Who's
have
on the right? Who's on the right as a right center back? Kennedy or
I
Miller?
think well I don't know how good Kennedy is with his weak foot. I know that Miller is passable,
Yeah.
not great, but either of them will have to adjust because I think they're the three best. Then you have Richie Larea and Sam Adekubi. I put Larea just because he gets more minutes than ZBG. I think Brogiard off the bench is an incredible, card to have in your back pocket.
I agree.
I think that Osorio and Eustachio have to start, and then we're talking about how Witherspoon can technically play as a pivot. And I do think that this team needs somebody in front of the back line just to kind of help manage. It does give a lot more freedom to Eustachio and Osorio to kind of venture forward and stay forward. And then, you know, the problem with I'd love to see Jacob Schaffelberg get a run in, but the thing is he's a better winger, and if you have someone like that on the wing, then you'd have to switch like a 3-4-3. So I'd have to put Hoylett and Cavallini at least as starters, and they kind of complement each other. Hoylett does have that pace, and Cavallini is a big imposing presence in the box. They do have a bit of everything, but again, when you get to the attack, it gets really thin.
yeah.
So if you're sticking with the 3-5-2, that's how I'd go. But I do want to see Schaffelberg get a run in. I do think that, him and Brim will probably be the two main attacking options off the bench. Again, Ali Ahmed, who also does play further forward. I don't know why he's a midfielder. He did really play as a winger too a lot. So he could slot under that attackers, which would leave them with four midfielders technically. But let's not get into that. And I think that would be my starting 11, which sounds super convincing, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
question mark 11, I guess, kind of. Yeah.
If
Alrighty. You know what? I'm just gonna go all in. Dane Sinclair starts.
oh
Just to be
wow,
clear, the starting
Hell yeah.
11 versus in the group stage versus the starting 11 in a knockout stage they're very different. Okay, so we're
yeah,
doing the first
completely honest,
match, very
completely
first
agree.
match, group
Okay,
stage.
this is okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fair.
So we're gonna throw Dane Sinclair in net. Left
Hell yeah.
wing back, we will have Sam Adekugbe. We are going to then have Kamala Miller on the left, Steven Vittoria in the middle, and then you know what? Transfermarkt tells me that Moise Bombito has played on the right center back, so he's going to go in that position. He's going to be our untested, fresh, surrounded by veteran presence, learning the ropes. Okay.
Interesting.
perfect.
Then we have Rich Larea as right wing back. Elias's justification works for me. In the midfield, obviously, you're going to start Steven Eustachio any day of the week that he's available to you. David Weatherspoon was also the guy that I leaned on as well as the second. And again, in the group stage, I don't think Canada is going to need to worry too much about having a pivot. Canada has a relatively, on paper, easy group.
We'll
Never
talk
an
about the
easy
group
group in
later.
CONCACAF,
On
but on paper, Canada should not need to have as much defensive coverage as they needed against the US last night. Then, of course, one of John Herdman's guys, pop Jonathan Osorio in the 10 spot. In the attack, we need two attacking players. I'm going to go, I think Junior Hoylett is more effective coming off the bench at this stage in his career. I know Liam Miller is more of a winger, but I like his pace. I like him on the ball. I like his dribble, and I'm hoping that he could maybe do something interesting as a second striker. And Lucas Cavallini up top.
Wow. Okay, I will go with the 3-4-3. To be honest, I don't think
Mhm.
we're going to see a 3-5-2.
Yeah.
I agree with your back five and with the goalkeepers and Borjan, the back five that you chose. I think we're going to see a Bombito or a McGraw as a right center back, and not Kennedy and Miller together. We're going to see Vittoria and we're going to see Kamal Miller. I'm choosing the best starting 11, not the first game. I will go, of course, Borjan as a goalkeeper. In midfield, I would go with Eustaquio Osorio. That's going to be the two midfielders that we'll see. And we're going to see Liam Millar, Jacob Schaffelberg, and I'm really Liam Millar, Junior Hoylett on the right, Liam Millar on the left, and up front it's going to be Lucas Cavallini. I think this is going to be the 3-4-3 with very good, substitutes with Zachary Boguillard, with Wotherspoon, and with Schaffelberg coming off the bench. Maybe Jason Russell Rowe also. I really like that player, so hopefully he'll be able to show what he's capable of during the Gold Cup. Let's look at the schedule right away. The Gold Cup schedule. So this is going to be the Gold Cup schedule for the
TBD.
2023. So Canada, Guatemala, Cuba, and the TBD. The TBD is going to be the winner of the game between Guyana and Guadeloupe. So it's going to be one of those small islands. As Yves said, it's going to be a pretty easy group. Don't forget that we're playing Guatemala. So Canada will be playing against Aaron Herrera. That's been recently called up by Guatemala. This should be a very easy group for Canada, right, Elias?
Nothing is easy in CONCACAF.
I'm just that, but also I'm looking at the locations of these fields, and it's giving me whiplash because they're going from Toronto to Houston to New Jersey. Who organized this?
No, two games in Houston.
Oh no, okay, that's for Guatemala's part.
Yeah.
Why Toronto? I'm confused because there's Fort Lauderdale. They have Guatemala. I mean, Guatemala's got it kind of rough too because they're going from Fort Lauderdale to Houston up to New Jersey.
Yeah, a lot of criticism is often.
If you want to highlight different areas of CONCACAF and have like this group will be playing in this corner where it's have like, Seattle, Vancouver, that area, and then you want to have like Montreal, Toronto, and then somewhere in the northern United States, and have each group play in different areas, kind of like what happened in the World Cup. That would be a good idea. But anyway, in terms of the actual group, there's definitely room for surprises. It's the group stage of a tournament. Anything can happen. At the same time, if Canada does not win every single game, that is a disappointment.
John Herdman's got to go.
Oh, that's.
We'll see what happens.
No, I'll say
it. That's the next segment.
Look at me segueing you,
what happens if and when they progress to the knockout stage. We'll see how that is managed. But I'm saying that any game that they do not win and win relatively comfortably is kind of even with a lack of European players, is bad. Yeah, I'm not gonna tiptoe around the word. It is bad. So, that's about it.
Now, let's go, Yves. You can start with the next segment. So, tell us a bit more about John Herdman. Do you think that the Gold Cup is the last chance of John Herdman? What does he need to do in order to keep his job or to not be fired? And tell us the thought process that you have behind this whole behind your analysis.
Yeah. I think it's tricky because we know from what we've heard earlier this year about Canada Soccer that Canada Soccer isn't necessarily setting up its national teams for success. And, that starts at the grassroots level, just to be clear. So, before I go forward, I just want to preface this by saying I don't think John Herdman is necessarily the problem. I think the problem is a lot more systemic than just one national team coach. Okay?
Okay.
That being said, given the quote unquote gentleman's agreement to not field your European players, or at least most of your European players at the Gold Cup, I don't think John Herdman is out if he does not win the Gold Cup, because at the end of the day, the Gold Cup, aside from the match in Toronto, is played in the US. We know the final is going to be played in the US already. So we know it's almost played on a tilted field to some degree, right? And that applies almost as much for the Mexican national team as it does for the US national team, because obviously both of those teams get a ton of support when tournaments are played in the US. So I don't think he's required to win it in order to keep his job, because the circumstances around this competition are just so weird, for want of a better word. But I think absolutely there has to be, if you don't win against this group stage, barring CONCACAF bribery or shenanigans or anything like that of the officials, I don't see how you can keep your job as national team coach, because at the end of the day, these three teams, whatever the third team ends up being, whether it's Guyana or whether it's Guadeloupe, either one, honestly, Canada should keep a clean sheet, relatively margin, you know, I think with a healthy margin of goal difference as well.
Mhm.
That would be more my concern for John Herdman not keeping his job.
Interesting. Elias, do you agree with the objectives of John Herdman? And if you can tell me just why are we so um, harsh on John Herdman? I know your thought process behind all that.
I think a lot of the harshness stems from the fact that he was so blatantly confident at the World Cup. He himself put this, not a target, but he did put himself in this situation partially through the whole Croatia thing. Um, I think if they beat Croatia in that game, then all of a sudden, even if they lose against Morocco and they're knocked out and they have one World Cup win, I think that this is an entirely different discussion. But and I kind of talked about this after the World Cup, where this next year is make or break for John Herdman specifically, because Canada Soccer has to decide whether or not he is the man for the World Cup. And if he is not, they have to find someone who is immediately.
Yeah.
So in that situation, look, I said it before, right? Canada should run the table in the group stage because they don't have a Jamaica or a Haiti or a Qatar
Like
or a Costa
upset
Rica
team.
that could give them real problems. Again, upsets happen no matter what. You know, even if it's 1,000,000 to 1 odds, there's still odds that could happen. So, but in all likelihood, they will win every game. How they perform now in these group stage games? Have you learned anything from the Nations League final? Again, you don't have the same players, but the way you go about your management should be the same, right? Because it's not like you're playing with no European players against a full strength US team or a full strength Mexico team, because they have players that are also not with the group.
Hmm.
And if I see, or if it's shown that he has actually learned from the Nations League, because what I saw at the Nations League, he did not learn anything from the Gold Cup. I think that he took all that
Do
experience from the
you
World
mean
Cup.
World Cup?
Did I say Gold Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay. I mean, he did not learn anything from the World Cup, from those three losses. He did not take any experience from that and then use it to change and improve his management style and the way he runs his national team. If I don't see anything in the Gold Cup, they can lose in the semifinals. It happens if they depends on who they get drawn against. If I don't see a John Herdman who has evolved and grown from the Nations League and from what he's experienced in the World Cup, then it's time. Then you have to start considering alternative options. Because if you wait for the next Gold Cup, or if they end up in the Copa America, this is now preparation for the World Cup. This is a once in a generation. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Canada Soccer, right? They're playing a World Cup on home soil. You have to have everything perfect, because if you don't, you will never get a chance like this again, right? I'm not saying chance to win the World Cup. Just the opportunity to make the knockout stages for Canada should be an objective. It's a distant objective, but that should not be off the table with the talent they have and the talent in the pipeline and how young this team still is. With that being said,
Hmm.
you have to make a decision on John Herdman as soon as possible.
Interesting.
I think that he has everything in his toolkit to be a successful national team manager, but the thing is, can he utilize it all? And if
Yeah.
it's clear that that's not the case, then they have to start, looking for someone that can.
Interesting. I have a different, I thought about this a bit differently. First of all, I look at, is John Herdman learning from his mistakes? We've seen quite a few times John Herdman failing at the last, whenever there's a big game, whenever
Yeah.
there's a trophy. We've seen him fail in the last Gold Cup. We've seen him fail at the World Cup. We've seen him fail now in a Nations League final. Now, that's one thing. And his decisions on the pitch are sometimes not at all acceptable. And choosing Scott Kennedy in a way, being not because Scott Kennedy is not a good player, far from it. He is a good player. He's
But
just
just in the occasion without any.
and in that position in the middle of
Yeah.
the back three, this is not where he should be playing. So that's something
Not
else.
for a final.
His communication, John Herdman saying before the Nations League semifinal, we're here to lift trophies. We're here to lift trophies. We're here to give a chance to those players that are gonna retire afterwards. Not playing Atiba Hutchinson in the final, even if you're
Mm,
losing 2-0 and losing your last substitute to put Junior Hoylett, knowing that you're choosing Junior Hoylett to go to the Gold Cup. So he was going to play at one point. I'm sorry, but at the 89th minute, you know you're not going to win the game. You could have given like 2-3 minutes for Atiba Hutchinson. So that's also a communication error. But and of course, tactically, it's just not normal that you see Alfonso Davies being pushed around from one side to the other, from one position to another, and everything. So tactically, it's not going well. Is he learning tactically? I haven't seen any changes tactically in the past 3 years. It's almost the same thing. And I understand that you need your core players to be here and to be the foundation of a group in order to go into a very big competitions. But when your core players aren't producing, it's time to change. I'm happy that McAnthony K wasn't chosen and wasn't picked up
Mhm.
because that would have been completely unacceptable. But there are some other changes that need to happen, and they're not happening. John Herdman did some very good, some tough decisions with Scott Arfield not being chosen also. So he is able to take those tough decisions, but is he taking the right tough decisions? And that's
yeah.
where I don't agree.
And then
And
we have
lastly,
some.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was no, no. Finish your thought because I was
Yeah,
gonna say
okay.
we have some interesting comments and questions that came in.
Okay. And lastly, and that's the part that's going to hurt most of the Canadian supporters. At the end of the day, you look at the results, and the Canada soccer is going to look at the results. Did you lose a game that you should have won? No, he never lost a game that he should have won
Yeah.
in the World Cup. When you look on paper, even here in the Nations League, you lost against the U.S. There's no shame in that. So when you look at the results, he needs to do a big misstep in order to be fired. So
Yeah.
I
But
agree with
it's
you,
how you
Eve.
lose, though, right?
Yeah, but that's not how Canada Soccer is going to look at that.
That's
No,
true. That's true.
exactly.
That's true. You're
They're
right.
not
That's
going to
true.
look at that. If it was me, I completely agree with you, but it's not me. You're going to look at the
That's true.
results and you're going to look at it very objectively. Is he losing the games that he should win? He's
Right.
not,
No,
right? So
you're right.
if you win the 3 games of the Gold Cup group and you win the quarterfinals, that should be against either it's going to be against the group. If they win the group D, they're going to play against either Jamaica, Trinidad Tobago, or another small team, which is not going to be that. So either Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
You're in the semifinal playing against most probably Mexico. You lose against Mexico again. You're not
They're
losing against a
rejuvenated
small
under a
team.
new national team manager.
Exactly. So I don't think we're gonna see John Herdman, fired at the end of the Gold
No.
Cup unless there's a big loss. So
Yeah.
players seem to be behind him, even if you know they seem to like him. He's created those players are here and they would give anything to John Herdman.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, is he gonna want to leave? And that's the only reason we would see, in my opinion, John Herdman leave his national team post.
Interesting.
So that's my thought around this. Even if I agree with most of supporters, we need better tactics, we need better players, and yeah, we need to win trophies. Completely agree. You had a comment, Eve, earlier that was.
Oh, we had so many. We have actually had several, and you know what? We didn't bring them up, but I think Matthew, sorry, brings up an excellent point where
Yeah.
if Deo Corpiano and Ugbo completely agree as well. Those are players I think, while they do play in Europe, they definitely could have had some time. They could have benefited for sure as young players in this Canadian system.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Now,
Especially because Ugbo's on the move.
Ugbo is on
Yes.
the move.
Reportedly on the
Exactly.
move. So he may end up back in MLS, but he's definitely looking to kind of show his skills, and he will be
Yeah.
very
Sure.
motivated to
Yeah.
show his worth.
Yeah,
And
undoubtedly.
Koleosho also, we haven't seen
Yes,
him,
we
and
didn't mention him.
that's pretty weird. Yeah,
It's
I
kind of
agree with Matthew
concerning.
though. Yeah,
Yep.
it is. It is.
Yep. Um, God love Chan is setting us up. Don't
Eve,
worry.
what do you think about
Nah,
that?
nah. John Herdman said that he's only here for the Gold Cup.
It was
So
so weird.
Especially because we know how big
Yeah.
of a Phil Neville fan Eve is.
exactly.
Don't even. It's Monday, guys. You would be nice to me. I had to get up early this morning to go to work.
It's okay.
Matthew-
I share that opinion with you. Don't worry.
Well,
It's
I
not an
I had a
unpopular
conversation with my dad yesterday for Father's Day. My dad was just as baffled as I was.
we have two other comments, I think, Eve, right?
Yep, correct.
So, Matthew again.
Yeah, exactly. So it brings up I think a good question, kind of that you addressed, Hady. Will players trust somebody else as much as Herdman?
I don't
And
think
I
so.
kind of, yeah, exactly, completely agree with you. And God love him, Tristan's sliding
Tristan.
in with the facts. Okay, my
Yes.
apologies for having to Google who Zach McGraw is because he won the MLS's back trophy. Thank you, fact checking Tristan.
That was in
for that one.
2021. MLS is
20.
back.
20.
2020. He wasn't even in starting 11, Tristan.
We don't all have Tristan's big beefy
Exactly.
MLS soccer brain that knows everything. But yeah, that is very good to know. He was probably with the group, but maybe just not in the starting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We do have quite a few questions that were sent before before the show. So
Okay.
let's start with
Lightning
Robbie
round.
and Sean.
Okay.
After last night's games, the question is on a lot of people's minds: should Herdman leave, and if so, who would be realistic replacements? We already
Carlo
answered the
Ancelotti.
first
We
part of
got
the
that for
question,
you.
but the second,
Carlo
the
Ancelotti.
Phil
second,
Neville is not a realistic replacement, to be clear.
who?
Phil Neville is not a realistic
Carlo
replacement.
Ancelotti is going to be
Carlo
named.
Ancelotti.
He's going to be named
Carlo
as a
Ancelotti.
Brazil, yeah.
But he
be
said
named
that
as
he
Brazil.
was not going to coach another team after Real Madrid unless it was Canada. So is he a liar or
Money talks, okay?
Money talks.
that man has
exactly.
won so many leagues and has been coaching for so
Yeah, but-
long?
Oh my
But
god.
Elias, it's Brazil. Like Brazil is like the
Like a
most
freebie.
coveted,
Yeah.
most coveted country to coach. Like you have so many
Yeah.
good players. They've won the World Cup 5 times. Carlo Ancelotti
That or
is going to
France.
Brazil.
I get it.
Yeah. Alas. Yeah, I have no idea who would theoretically
Yeah,
replace
me
John
neither.
Herdman. I was looking through like who are free agent managers, you know?
I
And
stand
Thierry
by
Henry.
Ancelotti.
Thierry Henry.
no.
I wouldn't be surprised though. I wouldn't be
No.
surprised.
Wilfried Nancy.
Ah,
Well,
that
we-
would be awesome.
That would be awesome. I don't think
That
he
would
would
be
do that, but that would be awesome.
No, me neither. Me
No, I
neither.
agree.
Columbus paid too much money.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't know. I really don't know just from looking around at the list of like who's available. I didn't see
Very
any
interesting.
names that like would
Wilfried
fit.
Nancy is my long-term pick that I would like to see at some
I
point
agree.
coach national team.
I agree. Maybe Mauro Biello. That's the kind of
Yeah, that's
decision
kind of
that would take Canada soccer in a
yeah, that's kind
heartbeat
of
without even posting
oh
a job
yeah,
offer or anything. Ah, we're gonna name Morbiello. He's already here. So
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of the thought that crossed my mind as well.
okay,
All
so
right,
let's move on to the second question from Sean. How much responsibility does Herdman bear for the loss to the
a
U.S.? I
lot,
think we answered that
a
question.
fair
The
Played a large
bit.
lion's
part,
share. Yeah.
and yeah, a very very big role. And we didn't talk about his lack of genius with his substitutions.
Yeah.
So let's not go there. And the last question is from Simple Guy. I know we're not as deep as the USA and don't have the budget, but what was very annoying yesterday was a lack of urgency and fight in
Hmm.
Canadian national team play. Where was the grinta? Whose fault is that? Players, and managers. I would choose
Well,
number three, players
it's
Likewise.
and
always
managers.
it's always a joint effort, right? When the
Yeah,
performance is
exactly.
not that good, the tactics weren't
Exactly.
great, but at the end of the day, the players there was no grinta, like you said. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
God
my
never sleep.
God. Worst. That's not a funny joke, Chen. Don't. I'm afraid you're gonna speak that into existence.
Perfect. So I think that was it for our program. Let's move on to social media to wrap things
Yes,
up.
All right.
So
Hold on. Hold
there's
on. Hold
lots of
on. I got
Twitters.
it. I got it.
Yes, the Twitters was very busy after the Nations League. The first one is from Charles Boehm. John Herdman said after the game, "You look at the set pieces the U.S. played. Every set piece, we were there by fingernails. The organization, the timing, the variety was so difficult to deal with. You could see the preparation the U.S. have had. Those pieces made a big difference. I mean, obviously, the first goal was an incredibly worked set piece. Do you
John
think
Herdman.
if Canada had a week more to prepare, that this is a different result?"
no,
I think it would have maybe been a bit more competitive,
no,
but I think it still would have resulted in a loss.
I don't think it would have made a difference. I'm sorry
Really,
at
at
all
all.
because it's so easy to blame it on set piece, and it's not the set pieces that made Canada
No.
lose. Canada should have lost that game
No,
6-0.
but
It's as
perhaps
simple
and
as that.
my geez, I'm gonna about to put on my would have, could have, should have hat. I'm about to put on my hypothetical hat. It's rare occurrence. So
Hypothetical
you better
time.
enjoy
Let's
it.
go. Hypothetical
With
time.
with extra preparation, would Scott Kennedy have been better prepared to play in the middle of a back three?
Wow, Eve,
With
since when? Since when you're
Wow.
that like what? What's going on?
I
I'm
mean,
asking the question
that's not a
sincerely.
bad
Would he
point.
have
It's not
been
a bad point. I don't
right?
think it would have been
Because let's
enough
face it,
to
that
make
didn't.
that much of a difference, but I
No, I
think it
think
definitely
it
would have
still
been
would have
better.
been.
I think it would be better.
Yeah, and like would maybe John Herdman would have had time to realize that whoa, Ismail Kone really doesn't have that pivot bone in his body. So I got to figure out an alternative midfielder to him, be it David Weatherspoon, be it Atiba Hutchinson, and we hope he's got 60 minutes in his legs, um, and so on and so forth. So I still think it would have been a loss. Absolutely, I think, however, Canada would have given a more admirable acquittal of themselves.
Possible. We'll never know.
And no, we will never know because hypotheticals are just the worst.
Exactly.
All right.
Moving
Moving
on
on
to the
to
next tweet.
the next one. Yes, is from El Kanako. Artwork is nice. Allowing him to sub in the game last night would have been
Oh
even better. This is a
yeah.
response to a Canada soccer tweet where they gifted Atip Hutchinson and his family. Very nice artwork, to be fair. It's very nice artwork. But
Yeah, you know what's nicer? Playing.
minutes. Um, what can you talk about? This is related, not related to his minutes, but more so about Atip Hutchinson himself. What importance has he brought to this national team, and what will be his
Oh my god.
legacy?
Can I
You
start?
know, as yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Atiba Hutchinson stuck through Canada soccer through some of the darkest times of the 2010s that they lived through. He answered the call every time he was called upon by whoever, whichever buffoon was managing the national team at the time. He went down to the waterlogged fields of Honduras. He, watched the barbed wire in El Salvador. He lived, Canada's darkest day with that 8-0 loss. He lived through that and he learned from it and he carried that experience for this team and he brought the team to qualify for their first national cup in my lifetime.
Mhm.
So he is a testament. He is like if you were to look up captain in a dictionary, you would find Atiba's picture next to captain because he answered the call, he showed up, he demonstrated such an exemplary work ethic, a humility, everything you could possibly want in a captain or a player, he was for this team. And I think it's going to be like massive, massive shoes for future wearers of the armband to fill.
Heidi, where does Atiba Hutchinson rank in the all-time members of the men's national team for you?
Easily in the top three, if not number one. It's just as simple as that. And Eve talked about his importance with the national team program. There are a few players that really filled in the gaps of Canadian soccer history, and he's one of them. You can name also Alex Bunbury, also that was a player that played between the 85 Gold Cup and the 2000 Gold Cup and never won silverware during those lost generations. You can talk about Dwayne De Rosario also. That's another one also. But Atiba, he's just been there everywhere. And most capped players, a player in the Canadian soccer, he's done everything. He's done
I
everything.
mean, you think about just the shenanigans of this Canada Soccer Federation, the fact that he answered the call when we had guys like Benito Floro managing this team.
Yeah, and he wasn't the worst coach that we got.
No, it's true. He wasn't the worst. He just comes to mind because I hated his tactics so much.
So no, he's a legend. He should be
Absolutely.
treated as a legend, and a legend never dies. So he's gonna be here. He's gonna be in the record books for years and years and years to come.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully he sticks around Canada Soccer in some sort of role because
I'm pretty sure he is.
Oh, yeah.
As Holy Gale said, a class act in the comments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
completely agree.
Moving on to the next
Number
tweet,
3.
we have from Simon Evans. It is a crowd of I'd say maybe third.
Yeah, that was disappointing.
Stadium at the final. Really disappointing crowd for the final.
Yeah.
What went wrong, right? Because again, this is not a small game. This is I'm sure a lot of people bought tickets beforehand in anticipation for whatever combination of teams was probably going to be a pretty good matchup. What went wrong here that the attendance was so poor?
It's not the first time we've seen it, and I know I didn't pay attention this time around, but I know for sure that US Soccer has been criticized for having prohibitive ticket prices in the past. I didn't quite pay attention this time around. I don't know if that was the case, but I do know certainly during World Cup qualifying that they were absolutely criticized for how expensive tickets were. And obviously I think we all know that inflation is just kicking our ass right now this year. And that doesn't help as well. I think Matthew brings up a really good point that tickets that were on sale were for both games of the day. So undoubtedly there were some folks who, if they stuck around for Mexico versus Panama, maybe they didn't have a vested interest in the following match, and they decided to go home. But I mean, your nation is your nation, and let's face it, your team lost to one of the two teams playing in that final, so maybe or your nation, as it were. So maybe you're a little salty.
You root for the other team.
That's fair. Hadi, are finals like this kind of a worrying sight for a country that's about to host a World Cup in 3 years?
No. And the reason behind it is that it's the Nations League. It's a makeshift tournament. It's not worth anything. I'm sorry.
Are some of the underlying causes, though, like namely ticket prices?
This is the same Hadi who's like all over the. Oh my God, what's it called again? I can't remember what it's called. The competition with the teams, the Mexican
Let her
teams,
figure it out. Let her
and
figure it out.
The Nations Cup, the League's Cup. The League's Cup.
There you go.
No,
the League's Cup.
It would have been one sec. It's important to win titles for the team that are playing them. It's completely understandable, and that I will not change my opinion regarding that. I'm talking about the supporter, the fan, that's neutral. What the hell is the Nations League? Nobody's really interested in that unless your team is playing. And even if your team is playing, you're going to have the Gold Cup. You're going to have the World Cup. you're gonna people don't have time for an extra competition, and
Or
we
money.
all know that. Yeah,
Or money.
yeah, and we all know that soccer in the U.S.
It's
It's
very
not.
expensive.
It's very everything is expensive. So at the end of the day, I think it's just the lack of interest in that competition. You see in Europe, the Nations League in Europe is not even publicized in a
Yeah.
certain way.
Yeah.
Like
It doesn't
It's a
have that
glorified
legitimacy
friendly,
yet.
right?
it doesn't,
Yeah.
It's
and it
organized
will never
friendlies,
be
right?
exactly. It
No.
will never have a legitimacy because it's
Not in
not
our lifetime.
exactly. It's not a
Yeah.
very big competition. The part that I don't understand is, and that's something completely different, is the reason why our federations, don't take the Gold Cup very seriously. But that's something else.
And now they never will, because Nations League is always going to conflict with it.
Exactly.
Moving on then.
Moving on to the next
Alright.
tweet, super uplifting tweet. Yes, that's not true. The tweet is from Dito. The only people I could be proud of right now are Ismail Kone and Christian Jack. Ismail Kone does not know what pressure means, unlike every single Canadian men's national team player. And Christian Jack called out our performance, basically boiling down to shit. It was shit.
Yeah, those post-game
Loved.
comments were fire, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Love the
mean,
comments from Christian Jack.
Ismail Kone did
Yeah.
have a good game, but I kind of want to focus on Christian Jack now because we do the past 2 years of Canadian men's soccer coverage has been really kind of, they can do no wrong.
Fangirling?
Oh no, fangirl. That is the word. I thought of a much cruder word that I will not say on the air, but fangirling is a much better and much more acceptable word. What do you think about this will we see an increase in people that are finally starting to like see the team with fewer rose colored lenses and finally calling them out when they are not at the level that was needed?
I think it's very important to balance out the existing coverage that you highlighted earlier with some pessimistic eve, if you will.
A little bit,
Because
yeah.
at the end of the day, let's face it, last night was not a banner performance. No player on the Canadian national team is going to add that to their highlight reel, or even their like low light reel. Um,
That is true.
so no, I think it's very important that regardless of, what outlet or what organization you represent, that you maintain that neutrality and that you call out crap when you see it. So I think it was a very good dose of realism.
Hattie, what do you think?
Yeah. Listen, I love the comments of Christian Jack. I think he nailed it completely.
Yeah.
He said it exactly like it is. And he threw John Herdman under the bus. And he's completely right because, yeah. And we talked about a bit earlier with the question of simple plan. Simple guy.
Simple
Sorry,
guy.
simple plan.
Okay.
Simple guy. Simple
Age
guy.
yourself, Hattie.
Sorry. A simple guy saying and asking who's the culprit is, and we've said players and managers. But at the end of the day, the manager prepares the players. So, for me, Canada didn't show up, and
Yep.
KJ was completely right
But like
in
Robbie
his.
says,
It's important.
yeah,
It's important for a commentator, an analyst nowadays in 2023 to show his passion. It's important. That's how a Canadian supporter wants to live a game. He wants to live the game with passionate people. That's what they want to see. That's what they want
yeah,
to feel. They want someone to express their feelings while watching the game, or at the
yeah.
end of the game, or before the game. And he did very well. He did very, very well. And yeah, there's nothing
Yeah.
to add on what he said
Nope.
because that's
Uh,
exactly it.
Maybe we should like
That is very
retweet it
true.
or something on our Twitter for anyone who hasn't had a chance to catch them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the comments are scathing but correct.
Yep. All right. Last but not
We have
least.
one final tweet. This is from
Oh
Tristan.
no.
was in who was in the chat and gave a very nice comment. Some news: I'll be taking a step back from journalism at the end of this week. There's so many people I'd like to thank. Everyone I've met that helped me, that read, listened over the last 9 years. Looking forward to the next move, which I'll share with you shortly. He does go on to give a very nice message to both journalism and the readers slash listeners. It's on his Twitter. I definitely recommend you go check it out and read if you have a box of Kleenex on standby.
Mm.
But Tristan has been on this pod. Tristan, I
I
have
like
known Tristan since I
Tristan.
got started in journalism. He's one of the people that grabbed me by the scruff of the neck as a little puny first year and forced me to come to pitch meetings at the link. And he's one of the people that forced me to then to push as a sports senator and really pushed me to become a better writer. And I would not have this job at the Canadian Press if it wasn't for Tristan. And by extension, I would not have met all of you fine people. So from the bottom of my heart, Tristan, thank you. And hopefully we see you back because you are too good of an egg to not be doing what you are meant to do. So I don't know if you guys have stuff to say as well, but I wanted to give a big thank you to Tristan.
Eva, let's just start.
I have so thoroughly enjoyed talking soccer with Tristan, no matter what the medium, and definitely absolutely wish him the best in his next ventures, whatever those may be. If he finds his way back to journalism, then I am all the happier for the world of journalism. But if he's decided to take his talents elsewhere, then wherever that next place is going to be incredibly lucky to have somebody as well spoken as him.
I still remember the first time I met Tristan in flesh, and it was a Canadian Championship. It was a game against between AS Blainville and York 9 FC, because back then it was still called York
Wow.
9. And we were there. It was my first game in a press box. That was my first time in a press box. And I met Tristan and Kevin Laramé, that works at TVA Sport right now. And the guy was so nice, and we talked, and I was a bit shy, and we talked a lot, and we met. He didn't know me, and the first thing he told me is like, "Oh, I don't follow you on Twitter." So he went on Twitter and followed me right away. This guy is I really love him. He's amazing. He's a great journalist. He's a great person. He's so fun to talk with, and I'm gonna miss him. And of course, the door is always open here at the Ball is Round. If you want to be a guest, if you want to be a permanent member, we'll of course talk about it with you, and it will be. I'm pretty sure I can speak for all the three of us. It will be a pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for the memories, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see you. We're still going to see you, hopefully, in the next few weeks, months, and years.
Right.
So yeah, on those words, guys, that was it for the Ball is Round. Thanks for being here with me and for sharing this very, very hard pod with me, because it's one of the pods that I don't like to do. But thanks for being here every week. For everybody that listens to us, thanks a lot for being here. Small reminder: our content is always going to be free. That's not going to change. We're never going to change that. But if you want to contribute, please feel free. We have a Patreon page. You can go on our Patreon and you can contribute for a small amount to help us grow the product. That's it for today. And see you next week for another episode of The Ball is Round.